So it's like the secret planet.
It doesn't work as you plan.
All the teachers from our network who were interested.
Can you use it really in the research?
A lot of our schools learned to also do this by themselves.
How often do you use it in your practice?
The students might not be looking on the board or just looking outside the window, but that doesn't mean that they were not thinking.
It's another secret the Japanese have.
And that makes students feel very much open.
What should be the chemistry? What is the formula of a successful lesson study group? So welcome to our Center of Excellence podcast. It's a great honor to host the two great speakers, the keynote speakers of WALS 2024. And here we have, first of all, Klara. She's a postdoctorate at Potsdam University. So thank you so much for coming and joining us today. And we have Shirley Tan. She's a postdoctorate fellow researcher for Windesheim University in the Netherlands. And she's also working with the University of Nagoya in Japan. So, ladies, first of all, welcome to Kazakhstan and welcome to the Center of Excellence. I know that you're in a very tight schedule and you are working on your speeches, and we are very grateful that you found time and came to our studio to talk to me and to our audience about education, about lesson study, and about your research, of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes. So the first question I would like to ask you is the same question that I will ask all my guests is, what was your first time that you found out about lesson study, and how come that for so many years you work on lesson study? Why do you still believe in it? Why do you think that this is a good idea? So what's your story? Briefly, I know that all of us have long story, long-term relationship with lesson study, but like a brief version.
You start.
Okay. Because I'm older. So
maybe you have more experience.
Yeah, probably because I spent a longer time in Japan, and that's how I got to know about lesson study.
Yeah.
I went to Japan with a scholarship from the Japanese government. I didn't know anything about lesson study. I just went there thinking of doing cooperative learning. And then I started visiting schools, and I realized that there's something about the teachers. They talk a lot about their students, even in the staff room. Because I know from my experience of teaching, in the staff room I probably talk about what I'm going to have for lunch. But teachers were talking about, my student was like this, my student was like this. Then I got very interested in knowing what they were doing as teachers, what gathered them. And so I got to learn about lesson study. It's been, I think, more than 12 years now that I'm into lesson study. And why do I believe in it? Oh, first, because I have a PhD to write. So I had to believe in it. But then...
So your thesis was about lesson study?
Yeah, and the use of Blackboard, Bansho board organization. Then I really see the impact of lesson study on teachers. And also if you apply it at a different level, maybe at the initial teacher education, preparing pre-service teachers. Yeah.
Okay, so 12 years of experience and a big belief in lesson study. Klara, what's your story?
So I did a master's degree in linguistics in Vienna, and I really liked research and science, but it felt very far removed from real life. So when I decided to do a PhD, I wanted to do something different, something where I can work with people and see that science can also have an impact on people and on life. So I looked at what kind of program I could join, and I found this project in Potsdam with the project leader, Professor Miriam Fock, and they were doing lesson study. And this is the first time I heard about it. I looked it up, and it seemed really interesting, and it was similar to other educational concepts I had heard about. So I applied, I got the job, I joined the team, and that's when I first started to go to classrooms, talk to teachers, and actually do lesson study with them. And I've been working with this project for 5 years now. And I hope to stay a bit longer because it's a lot of fun.
So did you have the same feeling as Shirley just described, that the teachers were discussing students more than you used to hear before?
Definitely. Also because both my parents are teachers, and I hear from them how much they love their job, but how often they feel also frustrated to be like left alone with problems or issues to deal with. And I felt like it's such a good idea to just tackle problems together in teams and to talk about it and find a way together to make the best lessons for students. So I thought it's just a great idea.
All right. So Shirley, you were researching more of how the boards are used in math classes or any type of subject?
In general. Yeah.
In general.
In all subjects. Yeah.
So if you could describe very briefly what is the difference, because when you see any photograph of Japanese classroom, all the teachers are really impressed. Like, this is the first thing that you notice, the board and how it is organized, how well it is organized, and you like really, that's really impresses me a lot from different colors and different styles that the teachers use. So what is it? It's another secret the Japanese have, not just lesson study, but also how they use the board.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. That was the first thing that captured my attention when I entered a Japanese classroom, because for my own experience, I really see board as teacher's authority. And as a teacher, that's how I felt. And as a student, I felt so intimidated when I was asked to go to the front and write something. It was more like a punishment.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case at all when I was in Japan. Then I wondered, like, maybe this was just a coincidence, just one good classroom with a good board. But no, because every classroom that I went to, I could see similarities on how much effort they put into planning the board. So of course, I look deeper into it, and then I realized it's actually part of lesson study. That's how it's related to lesson study, because in every stage of lesson study, there is a component of Bansho, the Japanese board writing and organization, in the lesson study stage. It began with the studying of material as well as planning how the board should be in a lesson, and using the board as a point of discussion in the post-lesson discussion. Yeah, so there's a lot of thinking that goes on behind this one board.
Because like the things that you told before is the feelings that I had as a student, because if I wanted to pretend that I'm the teacher, I would write something on the board. It wasn't like the privilege of the student to use it. And every time we were afraid that the teacher would see that we would take the chalk and write something, and then we had tried to erase it so nobody can see. So it's like the secret planet, which is just totally for teachers. And why do you think it's such a big deal for lesson study? Is it because it makes the learning of the students more visual, or something else is behind?
Yeah, I think you captured that just very accurately. To me, the main point of having a board is to visualize students' thinking and learning behind it. So when you think about a board, you think, how should a lesson flow? And how would this organization on the board help my students see the connections between different thinking, different solutions, and also make them think that what was unexpected, what was not anticipated, that could come from their friends. So at the end of the lesson, you should be able to see what happened in the classroom just by looking at the board. And that will serve as the beginning of the next lesson, because that's where you begin from.
So it's a whole art of using the board. All right. So we will definitely come back to you again. So Klara, you were researching mostly primary school students, if I'm not mistaken. These were more schools for gifted students, correct, or not?
Almost correct.
Yeah.
So in our project, we worked with 19 primary schools, and these were just regular schools.
Yeah.
And the focus of our project was, or still is, to help teachers cater to different achievement levels in the regular classroom. For example, or in particular, to high achieving students, so that when teachers have students who understand like a task some understand it quicker than others. So how can teachers maybe have different tasks or more complex tasks ready for faster students to help them just learn more? Yeah.
It is actually the common knowledge that in the classroom, the high achieving students get the least of attention from the teacher because they try to help those who cannot achieve or the like average ones. But those who finish fast, they're like, okay, they can do the job themselves.
And that was also the idea of the bigger project. So our project is part of a bigger initiative, and the whole initiative is trying to find some ways to target this group of students that is often overlooked in the regular classroom.
So when you were working with these students or with the teachers who were teaching these students, what was the goal there? Because your speech here, at least in Kazakhstan for WALS 2024, is about reflection. So do you think that is the key to success of a lesson study?
That's a big question.
Yes, I understand you have 85 slides about this, but maybe a short version again.
Okay. So I think that in the post-lesson discussion in lesson study, this can like make or break it in a way, because teachers they go into lesson study with a certain goal and an idea, and then they plan a lesson and they try it out, and they actually get to observe whether it works or not, and whether there are problems or misconceptions. And that's then when I think they should now talk about it and actually reflect on what they have prepared, whether it worked out in the way that they thought it would or whether it didn't, and then also make some concrete conclusions either for themselves or for the team or the school, like something tangible that they can take away from this lesson study process. Because I think there's a danger to do all of this work, but then to not really finish it and leave it a bit open. And not really be able to verbalize what you learned. So I think you will learn a lot, but if you're asked to put it into words, what is it? What did we really learn about our students in this classroom, or about our lesson plan? Then this is much more effective than to not talk about it and just stay with your own experience. So that's why I think it's important to lead a good post-lesson discussion. Yeah.
How about you, Shirley? Do you agree that this is an important part?
It is. I think because I was also researching on the cultural scripts of a Japanese classroom, I reckon there are so many things that are implicit, that are in your head, but when you think you know it, but you're not able to externalize it unless when you are asked to and we are guided, let's talk about this and this and this. That's when you say it. To me, when you say something, you're not only saying it to others, you hear yourself one more time, and it goes back to you. Yeah, I think that's the important part in post-lesson discussion too. Yeah.
So, but both of you are saying that there should be someone who is leading this discussion or facilitating this discussion. So the question of this knowledgeable other, how important it is. In Kazakhstan, for instance, it is not always the case that the lesson study groups have got anybody from outside the group, students of the university, professors, so they are just 3 or 4 teachers. So how do you think, what is the secret, how to make this conversation better?
I would really like to know the answer to this as well. So in our project, we're 4 team members working or facilitating 19 schools. And these schools are all over Germany. So it's not possible for us to always be there and act as a moderator or facilitator during the post-lesson discussion. So a lot of our schools learned to also do this by themselves. But it's really tough, and I think they always really, really enjoyed it when one of us was able to come and be there with them, and they found this to be the most effective. So we put a lot of thought into how can we help teachers facilitate their own discussions, and we like prepared materials for them, like questions they can ask themselves during the post-lesson discussion. And I think it works well for teams that know how to work collaboratively, and for other teams where maybe the collaboration is not as strong yet, or they don't know each other that well, don't trust each other to also talk about risky topics, or maybe about some things that didn't go as planned. I think that's when there's a danger to maybe just reflect on the surface and not go too deep into some explanations of why the lesson plan didn't work the way it did. So it's not a clear answer.
Yeah, well, I was hoping for clear instructions. No, of course, it's very difficult. So how do you deal with this? Do you help at lesson study groups at schools in the Netherlands or in Japan? What's your experience there?
In Japan, I don't think I was really needed, but
because they have enough.
They have enough. But I can share some experiences in Japan where the schools would invite university professors to become the knowledgeable other, or the what they call the jogensha, so like an advisor during the post-lesson discussion. That is quite common. Or sometimes it's the head teacher, the principal, that becomes the knowledgeable other. And in the Netherlands, we have we provide trainings for facilitators, so that these facilitators can then, of course, facilitate post-lesson discussion in school level. And now in China, I'm working with a group of university teachers with Shirley Tan from Windesheim University. We do, because of the distance, we're not able to be there, but we do conduct post-lesson discussion together online, where we can hear what they have experienced during the planning stage and also during the research lesson stage. So distance is a problem, but I wouldn't say thanks to COVID, but because of COVID that we're more comfortable working virtually. So we are giving it a try, and for now it's okay. I'm not saying that it's a solution, but it's better than not having someone, especially those who've just started lesson study, because there's this risk that what Klara mentioned, reflecting on the surface level, or when it's led by one senior teacher, other teachers tend to agree with the senior teacher, saying that, oh yes, that's how it should be done.
That's true. So do you use this classical model that came from Japan? I don't know, it's very popular in Kazakhstan when you have like the teacher and the student, pluses and minuses. Is this how you built your reflection on this or not?
Teachers and students, pluses and minuses.
Do you know this table that...
Is it from Japan, from
it
Chichibu sensei and Kuno sensei? Okay.
Exactly from them.
Okay.
So you mean for the post-lesson discussion?
And then you categorize them and find something in common.
No, we use a different kind of model. So we use something that's called learning activity curves. So it starts with the observation. So teachers observe a case student, and they have little sticky notes that have a specific color. And so each child is assigned one color, and you observe how this child learns throughout the whole lesson. And you write down like what is the child doing with like a timestamp. And later in the post-lesson discussion, you start by visualizing this learning over the course of the lesson, and then you end up with these curves that basically show how different case students learned. And this teachers really, really like it. It takes a bit of time in the beginning to do it, but it's really a conversation starter to show what actually happened. And it's also a really nice way to show what you observed, because you're the only one who observed this child and the others didn't. And often the class teacher who taught the class is really surprised of all the little things that happened throughout the lesson, because they were teaching, they were not able to observe everyone. And so you get this very detailed impression of like 4 or 5 kids, how they learned. And then you can see maybe there's a time during the lesson where no one was really attentive, no one was working, or there was a specific task and everyone was super engaged, and then it helps you to understand where there might be misunderstandings or a weakness in the lesson plan, and then this helps teachers to identify issues to talk about and to then analyze and find some solutions. So that's the method that we introduce teachers to, and that most teachers also do, and they really like it. We have a good experience with this kind of method.
Actually, I think Miriam showed this during one of our regional conferences, and the teachers also really liked it. And they even tried to guess what was happening in the classroom without seeing the students, without being in the classroom. But like this timeline is amazing, because you really see what is going on with the child, and when someone is like super attentive, another one is like completely out of the classroom. But there is a place where almost all of them are there, and so something good was happening. So that's a very interesting one.
I think it helps teachers to really focus on what actually happened. And like when you observe a research lesson for 45 minutes, an hour, so many things happen. So that if you don't really keep track of it afterwards, you might just remember the really good things or what went really wrong. But if you keep notes like that and hang it up, I think it helps them to also look at things that they might not have remembered otherwise, but then in relation to what other kids did at this time, they become more significant, and it can help to focus on everything.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So what model do you use, especially the virtual one with Sulin, with the Chinese teachers?
We would of course observe the lesson together, and then we give the teachers, I think quite similar in a way that we're using post-its too, and we'd give questions to the teachers. For example, what is one thing that you found most interesting in the whole lesson? So more general, if they're not assigned to case students, and questions like what is the one thing that you would have improved, and one thing that you would like to take and try out in your own lesson. These are some questions that we use in the training with the teachers in China. And in Japan, the university where I was studying, Nagoya University, with Shibata Yoshiaki sensei, the team, we use this TBLA method, transcript-based method, where during the research lesson, not always, but there will be 2 teachers or 3 teachers making shorthand transcript of what's happening in the classroom, what student said what, and this will be shared during the post-lesson discussion, which means that every participant will be given a copy of the shorthand transcript, so you have exactly the time, what student said, what student did at this point, and you as observer would stick your post-it here. This is the part I shared the same observation. This is the part where I noticed this student said something very interesting. And then when you get into groups, you talk about the post-its that you have in different parts of the lesson, and that's how you will see that we actually share some kind of similar observations more often than you thought. And then that's how the discussion become very focused. That's this part is really interesting. I also noticed students say something like that, and I think that's very similar to what you said, Clara. It's not based on impression. The observation is based on evidence. Most of the times we really say things based on our impression. I think this student is like this. But with the transcript or post-it, you say at this point, this is what the student said or did, without making generalization. So you're saying that this student did this instead of, I think that's what the students are about or were doing.
All right, so that comes to the next a series of questions about lesson observation, because you really need to have really good skills And when we first started lesson study in Kazakhstan, it was kind of like, I wouldn't say the word disastrous, but we had quite a lot of challenges there, because it seems like teachers would get bored, like looking at one student, and we would even take the photographs of them when they were like looking at the teacher on the board, or like out of the window, or helping students with the tasks and things like that. So what it takes, you think, to be a really good lesson observer, take notes, being focused? How do you train teachers to do that?
I think also connected to the previous question, I think it's one of the strengths of lesson study that you can observe and reflect in many different ways, and they can all lead you to the same goal of improving teaching and improving instructions. So I think it's important that you or the teachers find like a method or a strategy that they like and that they think is meaningful and that they're like into it, that they think this is a good way to do it. And then I think it I don't want to say it doesn't matter how you do it, but I think there's not one correct way to do it, but many different ways to really start looking at what children are doing and noting it down. And I think once teachers see like the value in doing this very systematically, and how much they can get out of it later on in the reflection session, I think that's really encouraging for teachers to learn what to look out for. There's definitely a learning curve.
There is.
Like it takes some time. I feel like you need to experience it a few times until you really know what to look out for. Do you have?
I think the same. To be a good observer, you have to be given the opportunity to observe lessons. Yes, that means more teachers should open their classrooms to their colleagues so they can observe each other classrooms, because I really get this question a lot, like, what do you observe in a classroom? What do you look at exactly? Even you say lesson observation. If we don't know what we're looking for, what are we supposed to look at? So, but I think it can also be progressive, like you say, maybe for teachers who've just started lesson study, guided questions can be good, rubric can also be helpful. Also maybe assigning them to different students, that questions that are aligned with the research question of the lesson study, the lesson study team. There are many observation sheets available.
Like it can be very helpful to think about when you plan the lesson, like what kind of behavior would we expect or would we want students to show, that we would see that they're engaging with the content and that they're learning something, and like maybe even make a list of indicators, and then teachers know what to look out for. But I always like when teachers observe a research lesson for the first time and then we talk about it, and they're always fascinated about all the things children do during a lesson. Like they'll be like, and then they played around on the desk and they chatted with a neighbor, but they were still concentrated. And like there's so much more to learning than just listening. And I think it's just a great opportunity to see what actually happens in the classroom.
It can move on from very closed questions, rubric, but as they progress, the observation sheet, if you like, can become more open to allow for more free observations. Because I've also heard some teachers really, when they were giving a very close-ended observation sheet, it's more like ticking the boxes, and once they've done this, there's no space for further reflection and interpretation.
I guess it depends on also the goal of the lesson and what you want to get out of it.
So interestingly, when we talk about observation, and Shirley, you mentioned evidence, let's talk about evidence a little bit. So you mentioned that the teachers are listening to what students are saying, they're noting it down, but we always talk about triangulation of the evidence. So the teacher may have an impression that the student is engaged and he is like saying, yes, I did it, or something like that, so you noted it down. But then you take his notebook and you see like there are mistakes there, or you talk to neighboring students and he would say, no, he's not acting as well as he used to. So where is this, how to find the balance in this collecting data, analyzing it, good evidence for lesson study?
That's also probably the benefit of doing lesson study is that you're not only seeing it alone. So the members who are there is already a way to triangulate your observation, your interpretation. So I might say something like this: student A is very engaged because I see her writing down but Clara might not agree, saying that, but she was just copying everything from the board. There was no own thinking in the note, I think, and that is the space where we both, lesson study participants, can triangulate what we observe.
Yeah, I think it's a very important issue, and a very important question. And I think it always makes sense to bring, for example, worksheets of students as another type of evidence into your post-lesson discussion, to actually see where maybe mistakes happened, or like how far children got in the task. And like you said, it's good to have so many people in the classroom and in the post-lesson discussion, and then also the class teacher might know a lot about these students, or maybe they even picked particular students because they want to know more about them, or because maybe they think this student is very attentive, but then this is not reflected in test scores, so they want to know more about what's going on. And you can really make use of different kind of data. And maybe one more thing that I was thinking about now, so when we ask teachers to hang these learning activity curves, so we ask them to kind of like rate whether this behavior that they observed was promoted the learning of the children or not. And this is always a very good conversation starter for teachers, because they might say, well, the child was looking out of the window, so I'm gonna hang this very low. And then someone else might say, but how do we know that they were not thinking about it? And this is when very important conversations happen. And like I was facilitating a post-lesson discussion, and like a whole discussion happened right there when we were hanging the learning activity curves about what teachers thought learning was. And I think even though this maybe was not a conversation about the evidence, this was a really important conversations for this lesson study team to have, and to be on the same page, and maybe also a discussion that you wouldn't have otherwise if you don't do lesson study.
Okay, so what is your experience, and what do you think about the other type of evidence, which is students' interviews? So how often do you use it in your practice? Do you think it's useful? What are the secrets out there? How do you do the interview so that it goes the way it should go, and the student wouldn't give the answers that are expected from him or her? So Shirley, what's your experience? Do they do that a lot in Japan?
At least for those that I have observed and participated, we've never interviewed students. One of the reasons being that lesson study is the teacher's led professional development, so we would not want to use students' time for that, to ask them to stay back after the school, for example. But there are other ways of doing it. One that you mentioned is through their notes. And in Japan there's this reflection corner in their book, a notebook, saying that this is what I've learned today from today's lesson. So from that you learn a lot about what students have learned or have not learned, wanted to learn but did not manage to learn. So that is a way of communicating with the teachers, I would say in a very intimate way, because it's actually written so that the teacher can see what I feel about today's learning. So that is one way. But also in some lesson study cycles I've participated, teachers would conduct survey at the beginning of a school year to see what students feel about this topic, this subject. It's a way to gather feedback from the students without directly interviewing them. But in China we did do case students interview. And of course, if you want to get good grades, that's also very cultural. You might say things to please your teacher. Everything was wonderful. I understand your lesson perfectly. So we had other researchers who were not teaching to conduct the interview instead, or sometimes in a group, so that the 3 students can converse among themselves without the presence of the teachers.
But do you find this useful, these interviews? Can you use it really in the research?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, like what you were saying just now, the students might not be looking on the board or just looking outside the window, but that doesn't mean that they were not thinking. But how do we know that? It's through the interview that you can ask probing questions like, oh, I noticed that at this moment, this is what you did. What were you thinking at that moment? It's not like I was daydreaming. It's like, oh, I was actually reflecting on what my friend said. So that helped. That's probably a way of triangulating the evidence as well.
So Clara, what's your experience with interviews?
I think interviews can be a great way to hear what students actually think about the lesson or about certain tasks. Some of our lesson study groups do it as well. Not everyone. I think it's also a bit of an organizational issue sometimes that teachers maybe just not have the time right afterwards to conduct a short little interview. But we also have teachers who really, really value this opportunity and also asked us for, like, do you have any advice on how we can do this, and do you have any questions that are good to ask? So I remember there was this very interesting situation where we observed a research lesson where the teachers offered more advanced tasks to 4 or 5 of the kids that had the best grades in this class, and one of the children decided not to do these advanced tasks but work with the more practice tasks. And the teacher was like, okay, it's up to you, it's an offer. And then afterwards the teacher asked this child, so why didn't you choose this task? And the child said, well, the advanced task, that was only one task, but she wanted to do many tasks. So she chose the easier one, not really knowing probably that this is the easier one and this is the more complex one. She wanted to achieve a lot of tasks. And so this was like an insight into how this kid was thinking that was very, very valuable for the teachers, and that you wouldn't gain if you don't sometimes also ask kids and take student voice into account.
Exactly, because in some countries, in some cultures, this is maybe the only opportunity to hear students' voices. And in Kazakhstan, it has never been the case that the students were asked a lot about their opinions, about what they were thinking or feeling. And when the lesson study appeared, we really had to train the teachers as well of how to behave, what the postures, like the environment, they have to organize the place, find the right time for this. And it takes a lot of time and effort, and you have to prepare for the interview to have good questions, to be ready for the responses and have the other questions as well. So it's again the art of interviews, not only the art of the board, but different other arts as well. All right. So I think we're going backwards. We started with reflection, the lesson observation, data collection. So I think we should come to the first stage, the lesson planning. So from your experience, how does it usually work when, if you are the leader of the lesson study group, how do you make sure that everyone's comfortable with one another, that it's a really good cooperation, that people don't feel disappointed about the process or the result? What should be the chemistry? What is the formula of a successful lesson study group?
I don't know if there's a formula. I think maybe the key to success is to not have a formula, but to be open to change, to make changes. If you see that something doesn't work, or that the team doesn't work together, or maybe the topic doesn't work, because lesson study is it's not a fixed thing, and I think that's what makes it so great. Like, you can take this as a platform and really use it for your own advantage. And I think that's really important for teachers to see when they get into lesson study, that that's not something they have to participate in, but something they can lead, and this is for their own, just for them, something for them that they can make their own. But yeah, I think it's important in the beginning. So in our context in Germany, teachers are they usually don't collaborate a lot with each other. So usually you teach by yourself, and you're a bit more of a lone wolf in the teaching profession. So it can be quite daunting to start this teamwork. And we've experienced that sometimes the most important first step in lesson study is to just get to know each other. And maybe the first lesson study cycle will not be the most amazing lesson plan, but you will learn how to do lesson study, and then you'll be ready for the next cycle where you can maybe go more into depth concerning the pedagogical content. And so one thing we always ask our teachers to do is to set some norms for their group work, which might seem a bit childish in the beginning, but usually it's a very important step to just start talking about how do we want to work together, and maybe write it down and become aware of it. Talk about how we want to work together. What about you?
Shirley, what about you?
Building on your last point, is we've also created this guideline on how the kind of language that you use in a lesson study, not only in the planning but throughout the whole cycle. You don't say something like, "Oh, that is a nonsense idea," that's very ridiculous, but it really...
Are you insane?
That? This is not going to work. What are you talking about? Those kind of language is not allowed. So how do you build on each other's idea, not just agreeing or disagreeing, but trying to understand the reasoning behind this particular strategy or idea? And what we have also done is also to, probably at the beginning of the lesson study process, is to show examples of post-lesson discussions in different contexts. Seeing that, okay, what do you notice from this kind of discussion, or the planning stage as well? What resonates with you the most? Do you think this is going to work for your group? Why yes? Why not? That is how they understand how the planning stage should be, and what they think are going to work for their own group.
It's a great idea.
Take it.
I've also done a demonstration with Zuilin. This is how we would talk in a planning stage, and these teachers would observe us planning together. And it also gives them a sense, if so-called the knowledgeable others are willing to take the risk and to show us we can do it. And there's nothing shameful about it.
Totally.
And this collaboration, like what Klara mentioned, is like teachers are only wolves, but I like another metaphor. Sometimes the teachers feel like they are the queens of their own kingdom, because they can do like literally whatever they want under like the closed doors.
After they close the door.
Yes. And then it's very difficult to open up, like physically, to open the door of your classroom and to open your mind, to open your heart, to be open to other ideas and discussions. And it's not always the case that everybody is ready for this. And so do you think there is any instrument as knowledgeable other that you can help teachers to overcome this challenge? Some team building activities, I don't know.
Yeah, this was a big question, or a question that we still ask ourselves. In Germany, when you have people come into the classroom to observe the lesson, it's usually very much connected with evaluation. Yeah, I think it's the same in many countries. Yeah. So you really actively have to let teachers know that this is not the case. And so what we usually try to tell them is that this lesson is really the responsibility of everyone in the team, because they planned this together. And in the beginning we started with saying to teachers, only those teachers who planned this lesson should be there as observers, for them to feel safe. And if something goes wrong in the classroom, it's everyone's fault, because you planned this together. And then I heard from Tom McDougall from the Lesson Study Alliance in Chicago about open research lessons, where they would just invite people to come and join, even if they haven't planned the lesson together. And we thought that that's such a great idea. And we really wanted to give our teachers the opportunities as well, like if they don't know yet, they don't know anything about lesson study yet. So we started to organize. We had the second open lesson study day now, where we just invited all the teachers from our network who were interested to come. And there was a lesson study team. They planned the lesson, they prepared everything, and then the guests came and we just watched the lesson together. And it was really a great experience, I think. So if this is possible, I would definitely recommend it.
I think they do that a lot in Japan, yes, when the teachers come whenever they want to, any lesson they want.
At different level, in the school level, on a daily basis, like the doors are not closed. First of all, when you talk about the physical...
you don't even have physical wall.
No. Yeah, I mean, if you are not teaching that time, you are welcome to go to any classroom and observe or see how your colleagues are teaching and your students are learning. Because probably that is also your students teaching when you're teaching a different subject from the teacher. And I think what is important is like what you already mentioned, the feeling that it's our lesson. It's not my lesson, it's not your lesson, it's our lesson. Yeah. And I always appreciate that when we go into a classroom for observation, that the teacher would announce to the students, here, we have people here, they are coming in here today to observe how you learn, so that they can help me teach you better, so you learn better. And I think that's a very important message, because you as a teacher, you are admitting that I am still learning. And that makes students feel very much open that, so in a classroom, the teacher is standing at the front, but she is also learning like we do. So I think that is an important message that we can send to the students.
And I also noticed that the students become very supportive and they want to help teachers. And it's like win-win.
That's true. And giving the teachers voices as a team, maybe before the research lesson, where we have this briefing before the research lesson begins, where not only the instructing teacher says something, giving other team members a say during this pre-research lesson meeting, saying that, this is how we did it together, and also creating the sense that it's a lesson that we created together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. It's like keeping this goal in mind that the team has together, like this shared vision of just like making lessons better or learning more about the classroom. Like keeping this in mind, that's what it's about. It's not about how a teacher reacts in a certain situation.
Yeah. All right. Ladies, I have so many more questions to ask you. Unfortunately, we are limited with the time. But I wanted really to sum up a little bit of what we just said with you, discussed with you, that there is no right or wrong in lesson study or in your teaching. So keep trying and try to do what you can do at this very moment with these very students, and your effort is already a big step forward to your professional development and to your better teaching. And I would like to take this opportunity and also ask you, because you have this floor and you have cameras and you will be aired for Kazakhstani teachers, and maybe not only. Maybe you could wish something, say something to support our teachers who are really into lesson study here in our country, and they would really like to hear some advice, recommendation, or just some words from you, our keynote speakers of WALS 2024.
Well, I would wish for them to never stop being curious. And always enjoy the opportunity to learn something new. Like you learn as a student, but you also learn as an adult, and you learn as a teacher. It never stops. And I think lesson study is just a great opportunity to learn together, and in the best case, everyone will profit.
Yeah.
And I would say that the fact that you are interested in clicking this video link, it's already a big step. No, that means you are interested in bettering your teaching, which means your students learning. That's already a great beginning, a great start. But to know more, of course, we have conferences. I think in Kazakhstan we have wonderful resources to help a teacher learn about lesson study. But one thing to keep in mind probably is you will be frustrated at certain stage when you start. It takes time.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as you plan, but I think it's the frustration that keeps you wanting more. You want to make it better, and that is the essence of lesson study, because there's no such thing as perfect lesson, and that's why you can always learn to be better.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and you are so welcome to Kazakhstan. I wish you a really good conference, great speeches. I'm sure it's going to be a success, and you will become very popular in Kazakhstan as well. Overnight you will wake up and realize that now everyone in Kazakhstan knows you.
60,000 subscribers on YouTube channel.
At least, yes. And of course, I wish you a very pleasant stay in Kazakhstan. We really hope that you will enjoy it. It's very important for Kazakh culture that the guests are happy, and we want you to feel like home on every single minute that you are in Kazakhstan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for this great opportunity. It's really wonderful to be here, and I'm looking forward to meeting teachers from Kazakhstan and researchers, and to just network and see what everyone is thinking about lesson study.
Yeah, you will meet a lot of them in
Thank
a day.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.